Hey everyone, I'm Elise Favis, a reporter for Launcher, which is the video game coverage at the Washington Post. I have a very special guest with me today, and that is Jennifer Hale, an extremely prolific video game voice actress. She's been in Mass Effect.
I've had enough of your disingenuous assertions. I wish I'd done that the first time we met.
Overwatch.
And once you've done that, anything is possible if everyone pulls their own weight.
Metal Gear Solid.
I knew you'd come. You and I, neither of us can escape our fate.
So much more. How are you doing today, Jennifer?
I am great. Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Soon, Jennifer Hale will be narrating the audiobook from Christopher Paolini. It's a sci-fi novel called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, and it's releasing September 15. Talk about your journey into voice acting, how you got there, because I've also heard you're not huge into like playing video games, but you do love sci-fi, do love the stories of games. So yeah, tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
When I started, video game acting wasn't a thing. I started in Birmingham, Alabama. I was working at a video production studio next door to an audio studio and got called next door to do a commercial because I could talk without a Southern accent, and because I was going to a fine arts high school. And I was blown away that they paid me $30 to talk. So I got the guys there to be my mentors, and I went door to door cold calling ad agencies and built a business, if you will. And then I went to Atlanta and auditioned for a film. And I had been like going to school for theater and stuff, but singing in rock clubs was my great joy. And but then I got my first audition in Atlanta was for a film, and I fell in love with that. And that pulled me out to LA, that whole process a couple of years later. And out in LA, I thought, well, I'll just make a voiceover tape just to, pay some bills. And my first audition in LA was in VO was for a cartoon, and I was never allowed to watch cartoons. And I didn't know what I was doing, but it must have worked out because it was the first Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego. And I was Ivy that whole series, and it was a blast. And then that was my first game. Was that I did a lot of cartoon stuff, which was, and I still do, which is just an absolute blast. And that was my first game, though, was the game that went with the Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego. And shortly after that were the early stuff like Baldur's Gate and Metal Gear and all that.
Yeah, in terms of the cartoons you've been in, I actually blew my mind the other day because I had no idea that you starred in Totally Spies as Sam.
Sam. And Mandy.
And Mandy, right.
I'd have to do it myself. It was so fun. Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh, that show was awesome. But yeah, it completely blew my mind because it was one of my favorite games. One of my favorite shows as a kid.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, that's wild.
That show has the craziest following. Like, people are still in love with that show.
What would you say was a role that you got that you were the most over the moon about, that you're so excited to dig into?
Oh, man. There have been so many. My gosh. I fall in love with almost every role because they're just incredible. I mean, Commander Shepard was amazing. When I got that role, I didn't know what it was going to be. It was, a cool game. Mm-hmm. And playing Krem was an honor in Dragon Age. To be able to voice a transgender character in a franchise like that was phenomenal. And I have to say, I loved the Powerpuff stuff. I have several characters in the Powerpuff Girls series, and just getting to be a psychotic banana pants Princess Morbucks was just like, it's the funnest thing ever. But when it started, it would be a paragraph of being mean and nasty. And as we got going, I'd have like an entire page of just screaming and ranting. We were doing a session one time, and I finished one of the princess runs, and Tom Kenny, he's SpongeBob SquarePants, he reaches over and pokes me in the arm, and he goes, "You're red all the way to here." And I was like, and I'm so calm now. Cinderella, that's a really, really cool one and a tremendous honor to be. I am the second voice now in the line of Cinderella's. Eileen Wood was phenomenal, and she eventually aged out of the role, and I took over in, I think, 1995, I want to say, and I've been doing Cinderella since then, which is the greatest. And yeah, there's just so many. Just to have the career I've had, I'm over the moon. that I work in this business, I'm over the moon.
I really want to talk about Mass Effect. Like, I'm just waiting for that moment. You did a really incredible job with FemShep. You know, I think the thing that's always made me really curious is, you know, you had to do Paragon and Renegade. You basically had to do two personalities for one person, one role. What was that like, switching between the two? Was it ever weird, difficult? Like, did it feel like you were embodying two characters instead of one?
It didn't feel like embodying two characters instead of one, because the analogy I like to draw on is that we all have those days where we have our Jekyll and our Hyde, right? You know, I woke up on the good side of the coffee pot. I woke up on the bad side of the coffee pot. Like, we all have those days. And that's what that is, doing that split. And the other piece of it is that when we work in games, we're so used to working out of context and just surrendering to the moment, because when we record, we don't record in sequence. We typically don't record in sequence. We might do, if this is the timeline here, we might do something in this part of the timeline, and then 5 seconds later we're doing something in this part of the timeline, and then we're over here in the timeline, and then we're here in the timeline. And that's where the extraordinary power of voice directors comes in, and their guidance is critical in those moments. Those are sort of the unsung stars of these things, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a thing to flip back and forth, and it requires having a strong anchor into the middle of who that character is, so you know how far you can go in either direction, you know.
What was it like working with Mark Hamill as well? Just being the same character essentially, but different genders. Did you get to like collaborate and kind of have some freedom with how you both would tackle those roles?
It's funny. Mark and I did not work together. We worked separately. And on games, that's the other thing, is it's basically, those sessions are sort of 4-hour one-person shows because you work alone. And with a lot of the BioWare games, we are very, very restricted by the technical demands of that whole production system, because it's immense. That's part of what makes those worlds so engaging. But we don't defer a letter from what's written, or it makes it very, very difficult on the other end when they have to put it all together. So initially the way that worked is I came in and they had me listen to what Mark had done, essentially just do it like Mark had done it on the first take. And on the second take, I would then give my version within that timing that was already set, because I knew the timing was the technical demand. So I got a sense of the timing in the first take, and then I would deliver my soul on the second take. And then on the third take, I'd play with it a little bit, just in case there was a little room to mess around with it. Yeah, that was how I chose to walk through that one. The first time, it's funny, going back to the Paragon Renegade thing for a second. The first time I ever encountered that was on KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic.
Sure,
right. I remember we did all of Bastila as the light. Spoiler alert. And then I came back and we did all the sessions of her dark. And I was so confused. I kept asking Dara and Jenny, the directors, I was like, it's the same person, but now she's doing this? Like, it was the first time I had encountered that Renegade Paragon setup, and it blew my mind for the first few minutes, and then I got up to speed. It was like the first time I did a game. When I did the Carmen Sandiego game, I was very confused because I was simply saying the names of flags. I wasn't saying the lines in or out. I wasn't talking to somebody. I didn't really understand the usage at the end. And then what I said to myself was, just do what they're asking. Just shut up and do what they're asking. And then I got it. And then I caught on to it.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting.
It's a very specific skill set.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like there's so much of this process that I would have never thought about before. So it's really cool to hear you shed light on that. Going back to FemShep a little bit, do you have a favorite line that you got to do with her?
I have to say, I am sick of your disingenuous assertions.
You know, what you do so well is like that kind of like pissed off, but like that edge in your voice with FemShep. Like, it's very, very good. Which makes doing Renegade a lot of fun. I always have trouble with the Renegade path because I'm just like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I love all of you.
Right.
But the voice acting is great. Is there an emotion that you feel is particularly difficult to do on the spot?
It's funny. I don't think of it in terms of doing emotions. I think of it in terms of, we're trained as actors to, it all comes out of the material. If I'm doing an emotion, that makes it about me. And if it comes out of the material, it's about what that writer laid down and bringing that to life. So it's always who am I? What do I want? How does this who am I get what they want? Who am I talking to? Are they on the same page? And what's in my way? Like, those are the sort of stack of questions. And out of that, the emotion just comes. There are certain situations that I find just mortifying, but I'm irrelevant. What I think doesn't matter. I'm there to do a job, so I got to shut up and do it. And those are the sort of romantic, quiet, intimate moments. I'm always like, oh God, I'm dying. That's mortifying. I would rather slay someone, be slain, rile up a crowd, whatever. Oh, those are hard. Like when I did God of War, that was a motion capture gig when I played Electo, one of the I can't remember which God of War it was, but because they're always recorded under names like Pumpkin and Coffee and Latte and November, whatever. They always have code names. But I played Electo as a character who trades off her sexuality and off of seduction and whatnot. And that was just like, I was just clinging to Chris Zimmerman, our director, going, okay, you just tell me what to do and I'll do whatever you say. So
talking about, these things that you were mortified with or certain situations that were tough.
Oh, you want me to be uncomfortable? Is that it?
We're going to dig into that. No, it's funny because it makes me think a little bit of Camilla Luddington, who's, done the voice work for Tomb Raider. And in one interview, she spoke about how to basically simulate drowning for like Laura Croft, drowning, like she'd have to pretend to choke on water or actually choke on a water bottle of water. What kind of strange stuff have you have to do like that?
I love that kind of stuff. I mean, there was one show I was doing, which we don't speak of yet because it's not released yet. It's sitting in a vault somewhere and it's finished and it's fabulous. And we all had our main characters and then we had a side character. And I had a side character that spoke like this. Only what I would do is I would get a towel and put it in my hand and I would take a sip of water. I don't have a towel right now, but and then I would just like, and the water was just going everywhere and it was fabulous. I love characters like that. It's back to, I think the road you were headed down, which is one of my favorites of that was in the Mass Effect series when Shepard is spaced and going out and doing those, that gasping for air, that stuff and trying to live. Because when those characters are doing that, that's what they're doing. They're trying to live. They're not trying to drown. They're trying to live. And that's what that fight comes out of. That's what those sounds come out of. The hardest ones are the ones that are a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, like death by fire, electrocution. Those are really hard on you. Hopefully they do those at the end of the day. Yeah.
Do you have like exercises that you'll do maybe before? Like, is there preparation for that kind of those kind of moments?
Yeah, the preparation is ongoing. It's like, you wouldn't have a day where you were supposed to go lift heavy things and you would lift heavy things the day before to practice. It's ongoing. I have a set of vocal warm-ups I do that are like the scales, I do them in the belt voice. The belt voice is really important to get this whole mechanism strong and get my ribs strong and then just keeping my body healthy. I remember when I was like 16, my band got a gig at a club where all the other singers lost their voice because it was long. It was 6 hours a night and you started at 10 p.m. and it was 6 days. And I went to an opera trainer, and I'm not an opera singer, but I got that teacher to teach me those techniques, and I didn't lose my voice at that gig. And I swear that serves me to this day. I can tell it's not as tight as it would be if I were doing all that stuff. So I jump in and I'll do these workouts just to keep myself going, ready for battle, if you will. Battle ready.
No kidding. Gosh. That's crazy. I'd like to talk a little bit about the SAG-AFTRA strike that happened in 2016, and then the negotiations that happened in 2017. I know you were pretty outspoken about that, trying to get better compensation, more transparency with roles, safety precautions, and things like that. It's been a few years now, but how would you say things have changed since then? Have they changed enough?
Not from the perspective that I look at that battle from, because that battle to me was part of the larger corporate war on the middle class. And if you just look around for 5 seconds today, you still see it. There has been an insane and brutal money grab going on in the US since, the late 1800s is when it started. Well, no, it started long before that. It started, let's not even get into the backstory of it, but there's been sort of a corporate takeover of the entire planet, if you will. And part of that is squeezing wages out of people and worsening working conditions. And the notion that the marketplace will right itself and fair wages will just happen naturally is a fantastic notion. And I wish we lived in that world. But until the structures that are in place, until the humans in those structures, because they make those structures, evolve to a place where their capitalism has a conscience, that fundamentally will not change. So what's, I think, trying to happen right now is people are taking it into their own hands, which is, I think, powerful, because no one's coming to save us. We're here to save us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And we got some compensation shifts, but that battle even has to take place is the problem. That people have to fight for health insurance is the problem.
Yeah.
That someone can amass $2 billion while not paying his employees a living wage. So the burden of the things that those people need to live, like health insurance, like support services just to get by, falls into the public sector. And the word for the actual truth of the public sector is it's you. It's me. We are subsidizing those people to become billionaires. And that's a broken system. So no, it has not changed yet, but I'm not stopping until it does.
Right on. Speaking of other, issues in the voice acting world, and actually, looking at video games as a whole, I think that, what was it? I think E3 2015 or 2016, kind of around there, I noticed that there was a big jump in just more female-led stories, like Rising Zero Dawn and stuff like that. It was this like kind of this big shift that I was like super, super excited about. What has that been like for you? You've been doing this for a long time. You've gotten to see just how much things have changed. And how would you say that the portrayal of female protagonists, how would you say that has changed?
I think the portrayal of female protagonists has changed phenomenally. I think it was time. I think it's like a dam where all this pressure builds up behind. So once one thing peaks out, the whole thing goes over. And I think it's way past time. Just even the question of should we have a female protagonist and could a woman do this is laughable. Yes, there are some things physically that women may or may not be able to do. And you can't say all women, because there are some women who are unbelievably physically powerful. And there are some men who are not, and some men who are, and some women who are not. You can't genderize it. And this is my invitation to all creators everywhere right now. It's more than an invitation. It's a demand. It's a vehement request, a passionate request. It's a passionate request. Please take the casting out of the gender. Sorry, let me start that over. Please take let me start that whole thing over. This is my passionate request to creators, producers, casting directors, everywhere, writers. Please take the gender off your casting. Take the gender out unless someone is specifically talking about their anatomy, their hometown. Take out their ethnicity as well, because they can be anybody from anywhere. Take out gender, take out ethnicity, And unless you're saying my mother specifically, you could say my parent. Let's just open it up, because let's just get out of the box, for God's sake. And we can do incredible things. You're depriving yourself of all these incredible souls who can make beautiful things and be a part of your universe. Knock it off. Let yourself out of the box. Let us all out of the box, for God's sake.
Yeah. No, you're right. You got a lot. I agree with you 110%. I feel like video games are such a powerful tool for storytelling. And I know everyone says that, but it's just true. Like I love stories. That's what got me into games in the first place, you know. And a lot of that comes from voice acting too, you know. It's the strength of those stories is also in how they're performed.
Yes, I think of it as the ink in the tip of the pen, where you have this incredible pen that's been crafted by these devs and the writers and the producers, like everybody on the team. And if your ink is good, it will flow and it will land. And if your ink, you know, catches and doesn't always come out, it's going to be like those pens that don't quite work right. You know, they're great, they write, but they didn't fly. You know? I agree with you 100% that games are an extremely powerful medium for storytelling, because when you're in those games, you're in there for hours and hours and hours, and you're also co-creating because you're making choices. You're going down certain paths. You're invested, you know, and you're changed in some games by those games. You're inspired, your mind is opened, you know, you're relieved, whatever you are, you're immersed.
What would you say, I'm sure you hear from fans all the time, what would you say is the most like powerful story you've heard of how your work or a story that you've taken part in has changed someone's life?
Oh, now you're going to get me here with this. That's just mean, Elise. I have met fans, so many fans who have said, you know, this game saved my life. This performance saved my life. This experience saved my life. And they mean it. And it's always so moving. You know, my next question to them is, what are you doing now? Because when you go through hard things, you're beautifully equipped to go out into the world and make it a better place, because you know, right? You've survived some fires. I think one of the most unique experiences I ever had, I was at a convention and I met a fan. And when I heard the story, I immediately picked up my phone and contacted the team and sent them, I think it was a video or a story or something about it. I met a woman who had had a stroke, and she was young. She had the stroke young. And her PT, or her, you know, her recovery people who were supporting her, I can't remember if it was a physical therapist or somebody else, neurologist, said, why don't you try gaming to get your fine motor skills back? And so she jumped in and started doing Mass Effect. And that's where she learned how to game. And that gave her back the use of her hands. And it gave her back, she used that as the tool to get her fine motor skills back and recover from a stroke. I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah. And it also plays out in the fan, if you see it in the fan art and in the fan fiction, and like it inspires more creativity. It inspires great projects like this book, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, is going to be one of those projects, I think, that inspires more creativity and opens up universes for other people through art and writing and music and all sorts of things. These inspiring projects raise the level for all of us.
Mm-hmm. What got you first interested in To Sleep in a Sea of Stars?
I first was interested in this. I met Christopher Paolini at a convention, I think in Australia several years ago. And he mentioned something about it then. And he mentioned that, you know, we might meet again over this. And I was intrigued, but I thought, well, you know, it's creativity. You never know where it goes and how it ends up. And there's a business part of it as well. We'll see. And then they got in touch with me. I believe his father had the idea to see if I would be interested in narrating this audiobook. And I've never narrated an audiobook. I've listened to plenty. I love them. And I have a couple of friends who do them, and I jumped on the phone with them to find out what's involved. How do I do this? And it turned out to be something we could do. And it was daunting that my first audiobook was almost 900 pages and had 50 different characters. But I was super fortunate to have the guidance of our wonderful producer, Callum Plews, and then Sal Barone, our engineer, and many thanks to Invisible Patrick, our editor. With their guidance, it was a phenomenal process. And we also were under the gun because we agreed to work together. Really, we didn't have a lot of time, and I hadn't built this studio yet that I'm in, so there was a lot of pieces that had to come together. I was, constructing my buns off with or without professionals to help me. My brother-in-law, my nephews saved me, and then I finally got a wonderful guy to come in here and finish up the last stuff on it for me. And so it was just this confluence of, okay, we did it, and it was. I think this is one of my most favorite work experiences I've ever had. The story was incredible. So I've essentially read the book twice because I would read it, but I wouldn't, I try not to get too far ahead. So I wouldn't even have any sense of giving away anything about what was coming. So I'd kind of stay up with where, I knew we could do X number of pages a day, and I might read 20 pages past that or 30. And then I'd just wait, and then I'd read the next section. So I read it to myself, and then I read it out loud. So I read it twice. It's a good book.
Man, that's so cool. Yeah, and Christopher Paolini, I read his Aragon series back in the day, which he wrote when he was quite young, if I remember correctly. So
you got to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you like sci-fi, it's beautiful. It touches on the nature of why we're all here. It's got this beautiful cast of characters that are so clear and so wonderful. And if I might suggest, try the audiobook. Actually, I heard it's okay. I don't know how it is. This is my first one, so don't judge me too much.
No, I'm so curious because you said there's 50 characters in this book. Wild. Does that mean you do different voices?
Oh yeah, yeah. But from what I understood, I'm looking for a thing to show you. From what I understood from my friends who had done audiobooks, and from listening to them myself, it's a little bit of a balancing act between jumping into the character and going too far with it that you pull people out of the audiobook. I tried to walk that line. Now, a couple of the characters were so strong, they were all or nothing. You just went all in with them or you didn't do them. Mm-hmm. So, but I'll show you. I don't think I'm giving anything away, but I have stacks of voice memos for this. And I made a voice memo every time I did every time, I'd work out with Callum the sound of that character. And so once we nailed it, then I would record a couple lines as that character, because they might appear and then be gone for 120 pages or 200 pages or, whatever. You just didn't know. Or 20 pages even, or 3 pages. You're like, what did that sound like? I was like, oh, hold on. I have to look that up again because I'm 6 other people in the last 5 minutes. Yeah.
How do you keep, even beyond this book, how do you keep track of all the different voices and the characters? I mean, you've been in over 200 games, which is crazy.
That's voice memo.
Crazy mixed up in your head?
I don't. It's so funny. I'm stunt Dory when Ellen's busy. I'm the sub-in Dory when Ellen's busy, and Dory and I have this one thing in common, which is what I did that. Cool. So, I work under NDA so much, and there's a time delay between the time I do something, all of us, the time we do something, and then the time it comes out. So I don't always remember what I did because I've done so many things. So the answer is I don't always track. Some things I've done so much, or they were so unique that they don't leave me. But I reference them. I'll look them up. I'll, have a peek. And even when I remember them quite clearly, I'll always look them up because it's like, it's sort of like staying in the sweet spot. I could be in the general zone of, but I want to get right in the middle, right in that sweet spot. I know the voice, but I want to be right in the seat of the soul of that character.
Neat. Mm-hmm. Because you've just been so many different characters, is there a specific voice that you've done that you'd say routinely people are surprised to find out it was you. Like, I don't know, Samus and Metroid Prime or something like that.
Yeah, Samus and Metroid Prime, Krem. People are often surprised by Krem. Princess Morbucks, Mandy, Giganta, Killer Frost, the Justice League stuff. Sometimes people are like, oh wow, you know. Mostly it's they didn't expect that, you know, that kind of thing.
Got it. Yeah.
It's the little crazy ones that don't sound like anything else. They're like, what? That was you? I'm like, yeah, that was me.
Oh man, that's awesome that you could just turn that on. That's cool.
It's my job, Elise.
Oh my gosh.
I'm adulting now.
Going back to what you mentioned earlier when we were talking a bit about the freedom that you get when, you know, bringing your own kind of improvisation or whatever to roles. And you're saying that with video games, there's a lot of technical restrictions. Can you tell me a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, the technical restrictions and their impact on the performance varies from game to game, company to company. I mean, at one end of the spectrum, you've got some of the BioWare stuff that is so demanding because of the way their system is and also the wide variety they're dealing with and all that. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got something like a BioShock Infinite where, you know, Oliver and I actually got to record at the same time, which that is the rare untapped gold that I think more and more devs, you know, should take advantage of. Even with this current situation where we're all recording at home, there's technology that allows us to record together. To be able to hear that other person and have an actual conversation rather than an imagined one is powerful. So Oliver and I got to record together on BioShock Infinite, and we would go through a take as written. We'd get a couple as written. And when Ken was happy with that, Ken Levine was happy with that, we would go through and he would let us just play. He would ask, he would say, what do you want to do? And we just go through and play with it. And you get such beautiful stuff out of that. It's just, it's gold. It's absolute gold. Yeah. And then the mocap stuff, when we work mocap, you know, truth is, I'm not as inclined to go off book on those because I'm so worried about memorizing all that stuff and getting it done right, you know, which is a terrible place to come from creatively. But sometimes I am like, God, did I remember that right? Because, you know, most of my job I don't have to memorize, but a piece of my job I do. So that's like a whole other dimension of demand. And then there's hitting marks and the blocking and working with the little fake props and stuff that you do in a mocap world.
I've actually been in a mocap suit before. It's very weird.
Yes, the bad pajamas. What color was your crotch? That's like,
oh my God. Yeah. I think I had like blue. Yeah. So all the little blue balls around you and like, you get hot in those things too, like more than I realized.
Yeah. I always wear a t-shirt underneath it so you can not get the stankies. And I made the joke about what color was yours because they could have made that fabric color stripe anywhere, but instead, no, they put it right. And like, why didn't you put a stripe down the side? Why did you make it right? Like, what is that?
They're so dorky looking, right? You just, I could not get over it. I was like, I can't stop thinking what I must look like right now. And it's so distracting. Do you feel like it's very distracting sometimes trying to act in a motion capture suit?
My job is not to get distracted. My job is to suck it up and get it done. So that's what I do.
Oh man. And I want to touch upon a little bit of COVID-19, quarantine, working from home. How has that changed voice acting for you? You know, especially when you're talking about BioShock Infinite and being able to play off another actor and things like that. How different is it now just being on your own at home?
It is different being in the home studio all the time. From a life perspective, I love it because I can be with my kid. I can, you know, I don't know, throw a batch of cookies in the oven or whatever, get them done, run in and work. I can, you know, I can do all kinds of stuff. I can one of my favorite things right now is when I have half an hour between sessions or meetings or whatever, I can jump on my bike, go down the road, get in the forest and come back. Like that's a dream. I do miss the interaction. I have to say the voice directors are really picking up that slack beautifully they'll read with us, they'll work with us, and they're pretty good. Some of them are really good because a lot of them come from an acting background. So that element doesn't get missed as much. And if anything, they're reading us in more now, which is nice. And by reading in, I mean they read the scene with us. And that ends up being wonderful. I think, COVID is an interesting deal. I look at things from such a big picture spot a lot of the time. And we all know the difficulties of COVID. We all know the icky, awful parts of COVID. I'm also seeing what I'm thinking of as the silver linings of COVID, which is we're spending less time at the mall, more time outside. We're spending less time, spending more time hanging out with people we care about. And we're very deliberate and purposeful in our choices around that. And our focus has become not, am I getting ahead? Our main focus now is everybody okay? And sort of to refer back to the other conversation we had, for many years, the corporate profit machine has been sending bigger and bigger bulldozers to take over the planet, to drain the planet of its resources for profit, and the planet will push back and they'll send a bigger bulldozer, and the planet will push back and they'll send a bigger bulldozer. And this time the planet went, oh, hold on, I'm going to send my smallest soldier. And that's what sat us all down.
You have this time to think about your life, and reflect and be like, am I happy? Am I doing what I want to do? Yeah. Well, these are questions that we don't usually have to come up against because there's always so many distractions and our world is moving so fast.
We've been pushed away from them by the world that we live in. We used to live in a world where we were responsible for getting food, and we were responsible for clothing ourselves and educating ourselves. And then we got into consumption, and that began to define who we are. And how many of us have had an original thought about what we want to do, or were we really sort of just pulled into it by the momentum of the world? Like, we get to stop, like you just said, we get to stop and go, what do I actually want?
Yeah.
Is it this? I don't know.
If you had to choose one character, who would you want to quarantine with?
Absolutely not Princess Warbucks. Cinderella might drive me a little crazy. Samus would just grunt all the time. Oh my God, who would I want to quarantine with? Shepard wouldn't be bad. I can't say anybody else in that game because people will go, that's who she wanted to romance. Me as the audiobook narrator for because there's variety there. And there's a couple sections where it was very soothing and very calming.
You took an easy way out there, but that's okay.
Oh my God, I did.
That's pretty much everything I've wanted to ask. Jennifer, where can we find you?
I am on Instagram. I am at jhalegram, Gram, jhale like Instagram. And I'm on Twitter at jhaletweets. You can find me there.